My name is printed in ink. My rank is crossed out in pencil. The envelope is heavy, cream-colored, its gold script so tidy it almost apologizes for existing. At the bottom of the card, the lowercase flourish is what sticks under my skin. Formal, no uniforms. Polite, precise. The kind of rule that pretends to be about aesthetics while rearranging the furniture of a person. The barracks lot outside my window hums with shift change at Fort Kingsfield, headlights washing over the lined asphalt in obedient waves. Inside, a mug of coffee has gone cold next to a pile of readiness memos. I turn the card over once, twice, the edge catching the light like a blade that knows the job is small but satisfying. Brandon Hart and Naomi Park request the honor. My name sits on the outer flap, spelled correctly, crisp and permanent. The life behind it, apparently, should arrive edited. No ribbons, no brass, no fabric that might make anyone stand up straighter without knowing why. I tuck the card back into its sleeve and pack a small overnight bag. Dress, flats, a jacket for the New England wind. My hand hesitates over a folded field coat out of habit. I leave it, but rest my palm on the stitched name tape long enough to steady the breath that went uneven when I read the rule. Then the zipper closes. In my head, an eraser whispers across paper. Swish. An old-school sound that somehow slices cleaner than a knife. Harbor Springs hasn't changed much since I learned to parallel park on its narrow streets. The house on the hill still leans into the ocean light. The hydrangeas are gone, replaced with something white and improbable for late autumn. My mother opens the door before I lift my hand to knock, which is its own kind of message. Lorraine Hart looks me over the way people scan luggage tags at baggage claim, checking destinations, not contents. "You made it," she says, relief and caution braided tight. From the den, my father calls, "Game's on," which is how he says hello when there's company. The hallway walls are a timeline in frames. Brandon in a cap and gown. Brandon shaking hands with a man in a navy blazer. Brandon on a sailboat, with his teeth turned up to catch the sun. I am there too, in negative space. A shoulder edging out of a crop. A profile blurred by a flash. My name on a brass plaque beneath a photograph where my head has been politely trimmed away. "We should reorganize these," my mother says, noticing where my eyes stick. "Another time." She bends to adjust a ribbon on a glass cylinder of floating candles. "Remember, tonight is about keeping things light," she adds, the word light stretched thin until it becomes see-through. People want to celebrate. I know how to celebrate, I say evenly, and step into the kitchen, which has been converted into a staging area. Boxes of votives and monogram napkins, florist papers splayed open like a lint-covered wedding dress. The seating chart is spread across the dining table, rows of circles labeled in looping calligraphy, little arrows penciled in where names have migrated. The smell of graphite sits under the vanilla of the candles, so faint most people would miss it. My name appears at the edge, neat but pale, penciled beside a sketch of the bar. 2 dots for ice buckets, a rectangle for glassware. There is a soft gray fog around the letters where someone tried to erase and then wrote me back in. "Gives you a quick escape route," my mother says, cheerful as if she's pointing out a window with a nice view. "And close to the servers. You always were helpful." I rest a forefinger on the cardstock and slide my place card inward by a thumb's width. It isn't rebellion. It's geometry. If someone looks again, they'll have to really look. "Let it go," Brandon says, appearing in the doorway with a clipboard, smelling like cedar cologne and new money. He taps the chart with the back end of a pen. "We want flow. Press table is here." He points to the center cluster with its handwritten crown. Press table only. "Photos need breathing space. We can't have obstructions." His smile at me is practiced, friendly the way a commercial is friendly. "Kernel paperwork," he adds, light as a flicked breadcrumb. "Don't worry, I filed all the permits for you." Laughter rises from my parents like steam. It's polite, almost apologetic. I don't serve it anything to lean on. As long as the forms were submitted on time, I say, and hold his gaze until his eyes flinch away, not because they're ashamed, but because they're late for something else to manage. Naomi steps in behind him, and the temperature of the room changes by 1/2 degree. She's not glamorous in the magazine sense. She's composed, the kind of compose that comes from watching chaos and learning where to touch it without getting burned. "Hi, Riley," she says, small smile, voice pitched to cut through the din without drawing blood. Her hair is pulled back, her hands unadorned but for a slim watch and the pale crescent of a scar at the base of her thumb. The kind of detail you only notice if you're trained to notice hands. She glances at the chart, the arrows, the pale halo of eraser dust around my name, and something in her expression files the information without animating it. "Remember," Brandon says, already pivoting to the kitchen island, "tonight is about joy. No heavy topics, no—" He wiggles his fingers like jazz hands. "Intense service stories. Optics." He doesn't look at me when he says that last word. He says it to the air like a password it already recognizes. My mother nods, smoothing a napkin flat. "We want laughter," she says. "Laughter photographs well." My father calls from the den. "Hydration photographs well." And someone who isn't used to us might think that's a joke. I excuse myself to the porch for a sip of air that hasn't been scented to match a theme. The backyard has transformed into a tented grid, string lights strung like coordinates, centerpieces staging for deployment. The bay sighs beyond the fence. On the nearest table, a stack of place cards flutters in the light breeze, whispering against each other like paper conferring with paper. I press a palm to the deck rail and let the image assemble. A room full of people raising glasses to the story they prefer because it takes better pictures. When I go back in, my mother is rewriting an aunt's married name with a fountain pen. The nib catches, the ink pools, and she reaches for the eraser. The sound, swish, is gentle, efficient, merciless. She lifts gray residue with the side of her hand, careful not to smudge the more permanent parts. "You always had such nice handwriting," she says to me, offering the pen. I take it, correct the letters, square the tails. "I practiced so people would read what I meant," I say. She doesn't answer, which is its own answer. My phone buzzes. Aunt Valerie. I step into the laundry room where the quiet is real. "I can swing by early," she says without preamble. "Do you need a ride out if the air gets thin?" I smile. I know how to breathe. "You also know how to hold it," she says, soft enough to be a scold and a hug, and hangs up before I have to disagree. By the time the sky turns the specific blue that only exists over water, more boxes have been emptied, more decisions made. Brandon does laps around the task list like a lifeguard who believes he invented the ocean. "Okay," he claps once. "Run of show. Cocktails, slideshow, toasts, dancing. Keep the vibe buoyant. No uniforms." He says it like the punchline to a joke he's already told twice. "We all agree?" His eyes flick to me as if to confirm a rumor. "We all agree," my mother repeats, looking at me the way people look at a child they're reminding to take turns. Naomi lingers, looking at the sign Brandon lettered himself. "Press table only." "You really wrote that?" she asks him, amused. "Hand-lettered," he says. "Pinterest is a battlefield." She laughs, then glances back at me, like she's about to say something else but remembers where we are. It passes. Most things do in this house. "Colonel paperwork," Brandon says again a little later, breezing by with a coil of extension cord, and this time he adds a salute that is all wrist and no respect. The room chuckles because that's the room's job. Naomi doesn't. She pauses with the smallest misstep. the kind you only notice when you've marched enough to recognize a beat going sideways. The word kernel sits between us for a heartbeat, unjoked. I gather empty ribbon spools and carry them to the bin. Out of the corner of my eye, Naomi reaches for her bag on the chair, the leather brushing the table's edge. Something metal slips, hits the hardwood with a neat little chime, and rolls just far enough to find the seam in the rug. Naomi kneels, a quick, efficient movement. I'm closer and crouch, too, because training is faster than manners. The coin is right there, warm under my fingertips for the half-second it takes to lift it. Nightshore is stamped into its face, storm surge, anchor, lightning bolt, and the edges are worn from being turned and turned in worried hands. I look up. She's watching me watch it. Here, I say, and place the coin in her palm. When Naomi bent to pick up her bag, a Nightshore coin flashed in her palm. She squeezed it gently, a memory that wanted to be named. They move my name like a chair. No one can move the truth. By noon, the tent had a spine, the string lights strung from rib to rib like neat stitches. The bay wind slid through the backyard and inflated the canvas with small breaths. Folding chairs creaked as cousins tested them, then folded again as if changing their minds. The sign Brandon lettered last night, "Press table only," sat in the center like a traffic cone for attention. Someone had taped a small arrow pointing at it just in case anyone missed the point. Brandon called us in a semicircle and walked the timeline like a tour guide. Cocktails, slideshow, toasts, dancing, he said, ticking them off on his fingers. Keep the mood buoyant, keep the stories cute. No heavy. He turned that last word into a joke by softening it. Remember, optics. He aimed the word at the tent ceiling the way people send prayers somewhere safe. We're building a night Naomi can remember fondly, and everyone else can envy lightly. Nightshore wasn't heavy, Naomi said without looking at me, her tone mild enough to pass a security scanner. It was necessary. Brandon glanced at her, then away. Exactly, he said, already pivoting to where the DJ was threading a cable. Good energy. He kept moving. That's what he does when something doesn't fit the picture. Find the next picture. When the circle loosened, I checked the seating chart again. Names in blue ink held their spots like they had paid a deposit. My name had migrated 2 places farther from the center overnight, penciled thin, as if someone was afraid of pressing too hard and admitting to the relocation. Beside it, a smudge where an earlier decision had lived and died. I slid the little card back 3 centimeters with one finger. Not enough to argue, enough to register. Then I stepped away and let the breeze finish my sentence. Behind me, my mother reached in and lifted the eraser. Swish. The gray crescent around my name disappeared like a cloud pretending not to have rained. Neater, she said, to no one in particular. Photos pick up everything. I walked the perimeter of the yard instead, running a mental map the way I would on a field site, choke points, exits, lines of sight. The caterer's van idled by the side gate. 2 uncles practiced their toasts with empty glasses. They laughed at their own timing and decided the laugh worked. A small girl in a tulle skirt slid a place card across a table as if it were a pawn. Her mother guided it back and reminded her that the names mattered. Brandon drifted wherever there was a cluster of eyes. He tipped a stack of napkins toward the sun so the embossed monogram would pop in photos, then strolled to a knot of relatives near the bar and balanced his forearms on the counter like a man holding court at sea level. You should see Riley's office, he said lightly when I was near enough to hear. Color-coded binders? She's better at filling out forms than filling sandbags. He delivered it with a grin that signaled everyone else to participate in the safety of his humor. A muffled laugh rippled. Someone coughed to keep from choking on it. My father took a sip of water as if it were a cue. I stood beside the high table where the guest book waited and let the joke hover, unsupported. The bay wind kept doing its work. A ribbon on a centerpiece shivered and lay down. Naomi didn't laugh. She was across from me, talking with my mother about where to stage the gifts so they'd be in the background of photos but not actually in the way. Her eyes flicked once to my wrist where an old scar traced a pale line. She didn't linger, and she didn't pretend not to notice. She just filed it, the way careful people keep track of small things because the big things depend on them. Brandon clapped a cousin on the back and veered into the tent again, corralling a pair of groomsmen by the projector screen. "Remember," he told them, "keep slides on loop until I cue the music. No dead air." He glanced at me. "And no procedural speeches." The pause before the last two words was a smirk without lips. "Understood," I said. He waited for a reaction I didn't deliver, then moved on. When the caterer needed help carrying crates of glassware, I lifted one without making a speech about it. The edge bit my palms. I liked the honest weight. My mother frowned anyway. "Leave those," she said. "Your dress will wrinkle." "It's not on yet," I said. "That's not the point." She was right. Here, the point was always the picture. I set the crate down and walked back to the center tables to straighten a runner that had wandered. My name card hovered again, not quite where I'd left it, like a dog called back to the porch. I smiled to myself and corrected it. A mechanical pencil lay on the table, still warm from a hand. I rotated it until the eraser faced away from my name. Relatives multiplied as the hour moved forward. Voices layered and overlapped until the air carried a soft, bright buzz. Aunt Valerie arrived with a tote full of emergency things, safety pins, stain wipes, extra tape, that made my mother relax by measurable degrees. She squeezed my forearm once, quick and quiet. "Oxygen," she said and winked. Then she was commandeered into fixing a boutonniere from across the room. Brandon gathered a new cluster and retold a story about me that didn't have me in it. "We were kids on the pier," he said, "and a storm was coming in and I told her." He shaped the air. "I told her to get inside and she started cataloging the weather, as if writing it down would keep us dry." Laughter flared. The storm did its part and stayed where it was. Naomi brushed past me to pick up her bag from a chair where someone had set it, apologizing to a flower arrangement as if it were a person. The leather grazed the table's edge. A small, round sound tapped the wood and skittered toward my shoes. The coin spun on its axis, drew a neat circle, and settled with the face up as if it had landed at attention. I bent first, the way training outruns courtesy. The coin was warm from a pocket. Nightshore's emblem, surge, anchor, bolt, caught a ray of light that slid in under the tent flap. The edge had the smoothness of something handled often for luck, or to keep a hand busy while a mind worked. I straightened and put it in Naomi's palm without closing her fingers around it for her. She closed them anyway. Our eyes met, the tent noise dimming around the 2 feet of air between us. Up close, she smelled like wind on clean cotton. There was a thin white crescent at the base of her thumb that hadn't been there yesterday, or maybe I hadn't been close enough to see it. "Careful," I said, meaning the coin, meaning more. "Thanks," she said. Then, very softly, only for me, the word that hasn't belonged to family or party or optics once in this house. "Ma'am." It wasn't obsequious. It wasn't a performance. It was a correction, properly placed. Brandon's laugh spiked across the yard from the projector area, trying to reclaim the air. "This slideshow is art," he told an uncle, as if artistry were measurable by the number of transitions per minute. "Wait till you see the sailing shots." He looked our way and caught the posture of us, upright, unbothered, and something passed over his face like a cloud deciding whether to commit to rain. The girl in the tulle skirt reappeared at the chart and nudged another name card with one finger. Before her mother could redirect, I crouched and slid it gently back, showing the child the small semicircle where it had been. "See that shadow?" I said. "That's where it belongs." She nodded with the solemnity of children who take rules seriously because no one has taught them to find loopholes yet. When I stood, my mother was behind me with another eraser. "Just cleaning," she said, though nothing looked dirty.
Your brother wants everything crisp.
"He'll get crisp," I said. "Don't be difficult. I'm being exact." She sighed the way people sigh when they confuse the two on purpose. The wind pressed a corner of the tent inward and then let go. Somewhere outside, the bell on a buoy sounded twice. A cousin rehearsed a line about love, stumbled, and loved the stumble. The caterer's van door thumped closed. A glass chimed against another glass as if to test whether it could sing. Naomi looked at the coin, turned it once, twice, then slid it back into her wallet. When she raised her head again, there wasn't any performance in her voice, just a question asking to be filed correctly in the only file where it would make sense. "You were at Nightshore?" I replied, "Yes." Naomi held her breath for half a beat, as if she had just finished assembling the picture. "They showed his whole life." My life was muted. Dusk made the tent glow like a lantern washed up on shore. The string lights hummed, warm and patient, while the projector cast a slow tide of childhood onto the white screen. Brandon in overalls beside a plastic turtle sandbox. Brandon at 8 with a gap-toothed grin and a kite struggling to leave the frame. Brandon in a tux with hair combed so carefully you could hear the teeth of the comb. Laughter traveled row to row the way wind travels over tall grass, soft at first, then fuller as the images decided for people what they should feel. My chair faced the aisle at a polite angle. The sign, "Press Table Only," sat at the center like a lighthouse to make sure all cameras turned the same direction. Whenever a picture included my silhouette at the edge of someone else's milestone, the image had been cropped to keep the milestone clean. Where a caption should have said sister, it said neighbor once and acquaintance another time, like my proximity could be rewired after the fact. No one hissed. Why would they? Correct labels are a quiet luxury. Incorrect ones are a joke that doesn't think it is. A boy wearing a tiny bow tie, someone's son, scooted a spare chair closer to the aisle to see better. His father pulled it back and pointed at the screen during a shot of Brandon and a sail, the angle so heroic you could almost hear brass. 2 seats over, a woman in a dark blazer set her glass down with the practiced care of someone who has kept glasses from shattering on moving vehicles. Next to her, a man with a high and tight haircut laughed at the picture of baby Brandon in a bathtub, then folded his arms when the slideshow started to speed up. The two of them didn't know they were cameos yet. Neither did the room. Naomi sat 3 tables away, an easy line of sight that felt designed by accident. The coin wasn't visible, but the hand that had held it earlier was, resting on the linen with the readiness of a nurse about to reach for gauze. Every so often she glanced from the screen to my face, as if taking 2 vital signs at once and comparing them against a chart only she could read. The soundtrack was a playlist Brandon had pre-approved, upbeat, photogenic, the kind of song that spends money on drums to sound like joy. Over it, the projector fan whispered, and once, when the MC adjusted the microphone on its stand, there was a small hiss, like a bottled breath leaking. A series of achievements took the screen, awards with acrylic smiles, a ribbon cutting, a step-and-repeat where Brandon's grin knew exactly where the flash would bloom. The cheers were real enough. They were also easy. The frames sped faster, Brandon's condo with a river view, Brandon beside a conference room whiteboard full of numbers that didn't need to add up because the photo said they already had. A photo from a 4th of July barbecue flickered. In the background, almost out of frame, a shoulder of uniform had made the crop, the hint of a name tape blurred by motion. Someone had softened the edges until the hint forgot itself. "Okay, folks," the MC said brightly, stepping forward as the music faded. "We're going to hear from our man of the hour." His smile pointed to Brandon, but his body made room for Brandon and the camera angle and the idea of Brandon all at once. The microphone wobbled in its clip and hissed again before settling. A few guests shushed the hiss as if it were a child. Brandon took the mic like a natural resource. Thank you, he said, laughing as if he'd just tripped over gratitude and found it adorable. You're all too kind. He surveyed the tent with the satisfied look of a man who had successfully converted weather into ambiance. You know, these pictures, he gestured toward the screen, which obligingly froze on him at 19, mid-stride toward a future that had his name on it in permanent marker. They're fun, but they don't capture what matters. What matters is showing up. A murmur of agreement made its rounds. Showing up is a concept that photographs well. Tonight we raise a glass to the real person, not the title hanging on his shoulder, Brandon said, giving the sentence the spin of wit and the weight of wisdom at once. He wasn't looking at me, which is how he looked at me when rooms were full. I could feel, without turning, Naomi's attention land on me like a hand pressed over a wound to stop bleeding. The woman in the blazer, one of the military guests, tilted her head at the phrase title hanging. The man with the high and tight exhaled through his nose, the sound almost a laugh, almost something else. My mother's fingers closed around her napkin in her lap and smoothed it ferociously. My father took a drink of water that wasn't there and set his empty glass down like punctuation. I didn't respond. That was the point. People think silence is an empty room. They forget it has windows. Brandon relished the space the way a swimmer relishes the surface. He went on with a story about how, when we were kids, I cataloged storms instead of running inside. How I once drew an evacuation plan for a birthday party and labeled the exits with arrows and times. She was always very procedural, he said, and the laugh he cast over the word invited the room to be in on a harmless tease. The harmlessness felt like those soft edges on the cropped photos, sandpaper used upside down. In the pauses, Naomi connected wires. Lakehurst. Someone had mentioned traffic from there yesterday, and I had looked up. Nightshore. Etched metal in her hand. The reflex that lifted the coin with a precise pressure that keeps objects from falling or flying. Her shoulders squared by a millimeter. She watched me the way people watch a fuse, not afraid of the explosion, just timing it. The MC drifted to the side of the stage, where the projector operator waited, nodding along like a metronome that keeps rooms on beat. At the back, the two military guests exchanged a glance that registered and filed something. They didn't reach for anything. They didn't need to. Brandon said a few soft things about love and luck and the price of good photography. He thanked Naomi for her patience with vendor meltdowns, for choosing him in a world with filters. He turned toward our parents and used words like sacrifice and lessons in ways that meant well and landed light. Then he pivoted. And my sister, he said, lifting the mic a hair. She's here. She made it. He smiled the smile you put on when you assume applause will cover the rest. Riley's always been organized. He paused for the chuckle he'd trained the room to give him. She's my favorite paper soldier. The laugh that followed was wrong-shaped. It tried, stumbled, corrected itself. Glass stems touched tabletops a little too quickly. Somewhere, a fork chimed against a plate as if looking for the right note and finding the next one instead. I looked straight ahead. The screen behind Brandon held him mid-heroics on a sailboat, the sun making a halo of his optimism. My name card, 3 tables back, lay still in the breathless air. Naomi's hand closed around a coin inside a wallet that was no longer just a wallet. The mic hissed once, sharp as breath drawn through teeth, then behaved. Brandon rolled his shoulders like a man loosening up to land the closing line. The MC, trained to sense the arc of a party and keep it round, stepped closer with his cue smile. The MC hands the microphone to Brandon to end the toast. Naomi takes a half step toward the microphone, her eyes still glued to me. The screen freezes. They banned uniforms. No one banned ritual. The tent holds its breath with everyone inside it. The slideshow has blinked out, leaving the white screen like a blank verdict. String lights make halos in the condensation running down champagne flutes. Brandon raises his glass as if the gesture alone could fasten the night back into the shape he designed. "To showing up," he says, a smile fixed to the syllables, the microphone catching the gleam of his teeth. He tips the rim toward the room, then, inevitably, toward me, the angle measured, the joke sharpened to glide. You can see him preparing to lock the smear, to seal the story with a neat bow and a laugh track. Naomi moves first. Not a rush, not a scene, just a half step into the wash of light from the mic stand. The hem of her dress finds the edge of the spotlight, and her left hand tightens around something small inside her palm. I know that weight. A coin meant to sit against skin until the metal learns your pulse. She doesn't touch the mic. She doesn't need amplification. She needs accuracy. "Salute, Colonel Hart." Clear, even, not loud. The room hears anyway. The word clicks into place with the finality of a bolt sliding home. Her right hand comes up in a smooth line, fingers together, thumb straight, edge of the hand aligned with the eyebrow. It is not theatrical. It is correct. The kind of correctness that turns sound down to a single frequency. Somewhere to my left, a spoon slips off a saucer and meets the floor with a domestic, fragile clink. No one laughs. Laughter requires permission. The room has mislaid it. I stand. Not for drama, so she isn't saluting a seated silhouette. My spine draws itself tall without asking. Breath measures itself in 4 counts. I return nothing. The salute is hers to give, not mine to take. But I let my chin acknowledge the courtesy, the way water acknowledges moonlight. The 2 military guests by the aisle trade a glance that is mostly muscle memory. The woman in the blazer rises, shoes silent on the mat, and brings her hand up to the brim of nothing with the precision of a person who knows the shape of duty even when it's invisible. The man with the high and tight follows a heartbeat later, his posture snapping into a line that could cut paper. Glasses lower without instruction. The sound of a dozen small breaths pulling in at once makes a soft, tidal hush. Brandon freezes. You can see the arithmetic fail him in stages. First, the smile falters as if a teleprompter has gone dark. Then the eyes go bright with the particular panic of someone realizing the room is no longer an object he's holding, but a sea he is in. He looks to our parents as if the script might be taped there. My mother's hands are flat against her knees like she's keeping a table from tilting. My father blinks once, twice, slow, like surfacing. Respect doesn't give it away for free. I earn it myself. My voice is level. It lands, not hard, but deep, as if dropped into water so clear you can watch it touch bottom. It is not rebuttal. It is inventory. Naomi doesn't drop her hand until the moment calls for it. When she does, she lifts the coin instead, the burnished disc drinking light. "Nightshore," she says, turning it so the emblem faces the room. I got it from the anonymous commander. A beat where 100 eyes learn what the 2 of us already know. That's Colonel Hart. My name in its correct rank reshapes the air like heat rising over asphalt. The MC takes a step forward and stops, half in his smile, half out. His training is to keep parties moving, to tuck the edges, to paste over holes with charisma. But this isn't a hole. It's a door that wasn't in his floor plan. He glances at the projector operator, who glances back like a man clutching a life ring. People don't know where to look when a room tilts. Some look at their glasses, some at their shoes, some at faces to see what everyone else is doing so that they can do it too without being wrong. Tonight they look at me, and then at Naomi, and then at the coin, as if triangulating. Brandon tries for a laugh, comes up with air. Hey, he starts, the syllable pitched to sound like a brother recovering an inside joke. He turns it toward the audience because that's where he has always turned things when they threaten to become heavy. The joke doesn't arrive. Space does. He wipes a palm on his jacket as if the fabric knows what to do with sweat better than he does. Naomi's chin is high but not proud. It's the angle you use when you're threading a needle and can't afford to squint. It matters, she says, answering a question no one has asked aloud yet. Names. Ranks. Work. It all matters. She's not lecturing. She's labeling shelves that should have been labeled a long time ago. The woman in the blazer drops her hand and stays standing. Her mouth curves at one corner, not a smile, just an acknowledgement, as if to say, the correction has been made, the ledger balanced in ink. The man beside her breathes out, the breath of someone who remembers where he put his spine and is glad to have found it again. A cousin wipes at her eyes with the back of her finger and pretends she is checking her mascara. My mother stares at the coin as if it were a lens cap that could be screwed back on. The string lights hum, ignorant and warm. The bay sends a breeze that lifts the edge of the tent and lays it down. Somewhere a child coughs and is shushed. The sign, press table only, looks suddenly like a joke told in the wrong language. I don't move to the mic. I don't need to. The sentence I've already said is still widening its circle in the room. Naomi lowers the coin, and the metal, accustomed to duty, goes quiet in her hand. The MC, obeying reflex, reaches for the projector control and taps a key as if a new slide could reset the night. The screen blinks obediently. An image pops back for a beat too long. A frame from the relief team in rain gear at a flooded intersection. Headlamps painting rain into silver string. My face is caught three-quarter, unmasked by blur, and the camera, having no stake in family optics, does what cameras do when they are honest. It records the truth without asking who will like it later. On my shoulder, clear as the edge of a coin, the boards show. Someone close to the aisle whispers, "She is a colonel." It isn't awe. It isn't scandal. It's a belated correction spoken into air that needed it. The MC awkwardly plays back a frame of the relief team. My face clearly shows my shoulder blades. Murmur. She is a colonel. The light stops. A hand gesture turns the tide. A proof that ends the argument, morning rinses Harbor Springs clean. The square smells like coffee and salt. Gulls draw invisible parentheses over the gazebo strung with bunting. A portable screen has been staked down to the brick. Cables run like veins to a small console under an awning. The town seal hangs from the gazebo rail as if to bless the weather. It does. People gather in sensible jackets, disposable cups in hand, the low hum of neighbors doing what neighbors do. Show up, watch, decide what it means afterward. Captain Luis Mendez finds me by the steps with a folder tucked under his arm and the posture of a man who has never once confused volume for authority. "Clearance is signed," he says, keeping it simple. "Clips are scrubbed, no sensitive overlays, no lock data, no faces without consent." He taps the folder. "Captions verified." He doesn't say, "I made sure you won't have to explain yourself to anyone who doesn't deserve the explanation." He doesn't have to. The town representative, a woman with a practical haircut and a talent for making a portable mic sound like a living room, welcomes everyone. She thanks the Harbor Springs Fire Department, the volunteers who sandbagged with their backs and shoulders when the river swelled last spring, the schools that sent bottled water south after the hurricanes. Then she gestures toward the screen. And today we're honored to recognize support that arrived from farther away, when logistics mattered as much as muscle. She turns her head toward me without making me a spectacle. Our Nightshore partners are here. The crowd applauds in that steady town meeting way. No whoops, no confetti, just hands agreeing softly with each other. The screen wakes. The clip doesn't swell. It breathes. Rain like strings. headlamps turning it into silver. A pallet lifted. A convoy inching across a map that looks boring until you need to live through it. On the bottom third, where the caption sits, the letters are clean and black and correct. Colonel Riley Hart, Operations/Logistics Lead. I feel the words land, not on me, but on a place in the town's memory where facts go to anchor. Mom stands near the back with Dad. She reads, then reads again, the way people check a medicine label to make sure the dosage is right. Dad's jaw tips downward once, an unshowy nod. Naomi's a few rows to their left. Her smile is small and unadvertised, the kind that doesn't ask anyone else to participate. The applause rises at the end of the clip like a wind that's learned restraint. It's not loud and it doesn't need to be. A local reporter shifts her camera to portrait, catches the square, the seal, the screen, the moment. She lowers the lens, scribbles, and glances at me like a person noting a direction rather than a headline. A kid on a scooter stops dead near the curb, wheels squeaking. His mother sets a hand on his shoulder, and the two of them watch as if this is the kind of civic thing he'll one day claim as memory. Backstage is a rectangle of folding tables, tangles of extension cords, paper cups, and the universal language of volunteers getting by with what they have. Brandon waits by a tower of plastic bins, jaw tight, cufflinks flashing sunlight into slashes. "You won," he says, not bothering with hello. "Stop it." He throws a quick look toward the square as if any public microphone is something he can take back when he needs it. "No one wins," I answer, keeping my voice low enough not to bump any wires. "Only the truth returns to its proper place." He laughs once, ugly and thin. "The truth," he repeats, testing the word like a suspect package. "You mean your version?" A chime sounds. The phone in his pocket lights his jacket like a small storm. He fishes it out without breaking eye contact. The subject line is formal, the kind that avoids drama by writing it down. Temporary administrative leave, pending review of reported achievements and credentials. HR signatures stack under it like a polite brick. He goes still, in a way I recognize from training videos. Not shock, exactly, but the moment a person decides whether to fight water or learn the current. He looks up at me as if I had typed the email myself, as if fingers could be blamed for their keys. "I didn't send that," I say. He knows. He stares at the screen anyway, then slides the phone back into his pocket the way people return a ring they no longer want, but aren't ready to throw away. Out at the edge of the stage, sound checks happen without fuss. A volunteer hands out programs. The reporter raises her camera again. Naomi steps into the lee of the speaker stack, out of the way of foot traffic and opinion. She waits until Brandon's shadow touches her shoes. He stops like a man who has run out of momentum a half step early. She doesn't throw anything. She doesn't perform. She slides the ring off, the skin beneath pale from absence of sun, and sets it in his hand with the care you use for breakables. "I choose the truth," she says. "Postponed until you choose it." The sentence is so balanced it feels pre-measured. Not because she rehearsed it, but because she's spent a lifetime mixing meaning with restraint. He braces his other hand on the stage rail. His mouth opens and closes around a dozen unmarketable words. He wants a camera that will tell him he is still the narrator. There isn't one. The town rep calls names for certificates. Handshakes happen, unflashy and real. When she reaches mine, she doesn't embellish. "Colonel Hart," into the mic, the syllables traveling across brick as cleanly as the letters on the caption. Applause again, measured, unmistakable. A man I don't know with a firefighter's shoulders nods at me as if handing off a hose where my hands can take it. The reporter snaps a photo that frames Naomi's coin, which she's kept in her palm, and the patch on my sleeve where the unit crest sits. Not a dramatic composition, a diagram of cause and effect. In the corner of the frame, Brandon has been cut off by the edge. It's not personal. It's what happens when the subject is the subject. He wanders to the back of the square as the rep thanks the logistics teams one more time. His eyes are bright with a kind of inventory he has never had to take. He doesn't look back at Naomi because he doesn't know yet how to see her without the stories he wrote for her. My parents remain in place, quiet. My mother's hands are empty. She keeps them that way. Mendez returns the folder to his bag and watches the square settle into its own ordinary. "Press asked for one still," he says, half to me, half to the air.
I gave them the one with pallets, not helicopters. He's protecting images before they need protection. That's his job. It's also mine. A man with a brimmed hat stops as he passes me and taps 2 fingers to the crease, just a nod disguised as habit. "Appreciate the work, Colonel," he says, and moves on before I can return the thanks. Naomi drifts closer without announcing it. We stand side by side while an elderly woman asks the town rep if the church bake sale can set up on the far side of the gazebo. Life returns to default without asking permission. "You okay?" Naomi asks, eyes still on the crowd. "I'm steady," I say. "Okay takes more time." She breathes a small laugh that isn't about humor. Steady is a lot. The reporter approaches, polite. "One photo of the coin and the patch?" she asks. Naomi looks to me. I nod. We hold them still in a piece of shade, the coin's emblem catching enough light to read without glare, the patch's colors duller in person than on posters, but truer. The shutter clicks 3 times. Done. A boy with a scooter rolls past again and looks at the screen where the caption still rests on the last frame. "It says Colonel," he announces to his mother, who says, "It does," like that is the only answer. We break down the console and coil the cables. Volunteers reclaim their Saturday. The square exhales. Brandon disappears down the side street that leads to the water as if the horizon might accept him as payment. Naomi doesn't watch him go. Mendez waits until the crowd thins to step back into my space. In his palm is a small square of fabric sealed in clear plastic, the stitching neat. A new patch, mentor program, stitched under the crest I know by touch more than sight. His mouth tilts in what counts as a smile for him. "We can put this on the board this afternoon," he says. "Recruiting nights. Open to locals, your call." Mendez gives me the mentor program patch. "Reveal it this afternoon." I nod. From afar, Mom calls out, "Riley!" and swallows. Cut straight. Pencil erases on paper. Steel doesn't. The parade ground breathes in rectangles, chalked lanes, orange cones, a line of cots under a shadefly. Afternoon sunlight flattens everything into clean plains, then softens as it leans toward evening. The small bleachers creak once when families settle. A whistle cuts the air, 1 long, 2 short, and the recruits run to their marks as if the dust itself were keeping time. "Fall in!" carries across the field. Bodies answer. "Medline on me," I say, and a squad peels off, forming the human spine of the drill. Mendez stands near the clipboard table, not mic'd, not needed. His presence is punctuation. We've built this demo to show what speed looks like when it isn't chaos. Casualties tagged, litter teams swapping grips without speaking, radios murmuring the language of routes and times. On my count, a recruit knees down beside a mock patient, checks airway, points. His partner salutes information with a nod and moves. A cot accepts weight. A stretcher finds the ambulance bay we've drawn in tape on asphalt. No one hurries. Everyone is fast. The bleachers learn the rhythm. You can hear it in how they quiet. You can feel it in how kids stop asking for snacks. By the second iteration, the line clears 15 seconds earlier than the first. I push 2 fingers in the air, the radio squawks back with the timestamp. "Again," I say, and the machine that is not a machine adjusts itself. When we break, Mendez steps forward and addresses the crowd as if he's telling them there's pie left, help yourselves. "This opens to locals next week," he says. "Mentor program will run Tuesday nights. Colonel Hart will lead." He doesn't clap first. He lets the room decide. The applause that follows is clean, not wild, hands agreeing with each other because they've seen enough to know what to agree to.
I scan the edge of the blacktop and find Naomi near the stairs of the bleachers. She's in jeans and a windbreaker, hair twisted up, posture that says she could step in on a triage line if someone asked. She doesn't wave. She doesn't need to. The space between us holds more than most conversations. Out beyond the chain link, where the sidewalk kinks toward the parking lot, Brandon appears late, hands in pockets, as if he didn't mean to arrive anywhere and found himself here by accident. He stops in the shade line and watches like he's discovering that quiet can be louder than a microphone. He waits until the crowd breaks for water to come closer. Close enough to be counted, far enough not to crowd.
He takes one hand out of his pocket like he's trying on the idea of accountability and isn't sure about the fit. "Sister," he says, and the word stretches, unfamiliar. "I'll fix it."
Fix it for you, I answer, not unkind, not for me. He nods once, as if the permission to make amends for himself is heavier than any speech I could give. Naomi steps up beside me without moving into his frame. She looks at him, not away, then back to the field where two recruits are checking each other's harness buckles with that particular tenderness rough people use when they're being careful. My parents sit in the second row, knees side by side like they were measured. Dad's hands fold on his thigh. He doesn't fidget. Mom grips the edge of the bench, knuckles pale, then lets go and smooths her skirt. When the crowd thins between evolutions, she stands. Not all at once, like someone rising from a pew after thinking about whether to kneel again.
She walks the short aisle with the carefulness of a person who has always been good at not spilling things. Up close, her eyes hold the shine of someone who's decided not to blink until the sentence is finished.
"Colonel," she says, and it's the first time in our shared history that the word arrives without apology or quotation marks. It is a small offering, set down correctly. I nod once. No hug. No theater. The acknowledgement lives in the space we don't fill. Mendez doesn't interrupt the moment. He does what good leaders do and lets it stand. Then he clears his throat, and I turn. He has a small packet in his palm, clear plastic over the square of fabric, stitching clean. He opens it with his thumbnail and hands me the patch. The crew on the field knows how to make a circle without being told. They step back enough for a view. I pin the patch to the loop strip on my vest. The hook catches.
The sound is so small you wouldn't hear it if you didn't know to listen. A whisper of teeth finding each other. In the front row, a veteran I've never met rises. He has that particular set to his shoulders, the old confidence held together by new aches. He brings his hand to the brim that isn't there and gives a salute that doesn't demand to be returned. A few others follow, not in a wave, not like a stadium trick, more like candles lit from candles, each its own flame. Reset, I say quietly to the recruits, and they do, checking webbing, retying a bootlace, laughing once and letting it go. The wind is picked up a little. The flag on the pole snaps twice, then relaxes. The light pours itself thinner. Mendez calls, "Positions!" and the whistle answers, crisp as steel on steel. Brandon doesn't come nearer. He stays where the asphalt meets the grass and watches a young woman show a young man how to shift his grip to keep from tearing his palm when the litter turns. He rubs his thumb over the place on his ring finger where a groove of paler skin has already started to fade. He looks like a person letting a story end instead of trying to force it into the next chapter. There's dignity in that. It took him a while to find it. On the last run, the line is a single smooth sentence. A radio clicks. The timing voice says a number that beats our goal by 2 seconds. The bleachers clap as if they've seen something worth repeating. Naomi's smile slides to the corner like a secret tucked away for later. Dad exhales in a way that sounds like a drawer closing without a slam. Mom's hand flutters toward my arm.
and stops just shy, as if touching might wake the moment and send it somewhere else. We dismiss the recruits. Gear comes off with efficient gratitude. Straps coil into loops that mean tomorrow will start clean. The crowd dissolves along lines the base has taught it to use without thinking. I stand still for an extra breath. The ground holds.
I shoulder my vest and step off the tarmac. The sun has dropped just enough to turn everything brass. Mendez is talking to a city councilman about parking. Naomi fields a question from a teenager who wants to know how to get into nursing without going broke. Brandon drifts toward the far gate. My parents remain seated, not because they're waiting to be told, but because leaving fast would feel like leaving early. I walk out of the training ground. The wind flips the edge of the seating chart I've tucked in my pocket. Souvenir. I tore off the eraser-marked corner and dropped it in the trash. The screen went dark. As the lights cooled and the crowd's whispers turned to applause, the pretender lost his microphone. And with it, his script, while she walked past him in full daylight, rank engraved on her shoulder like law on steel. What they tried to erase in pencil, she inscribed in metal. The salute snapped shut like a verdict, and the room learned how respect is earned, not issued. Let them remember, when betrayal feels safest, justice is already chambering its loudest round. Truth doesn't beg entry. It kicks the door off its hinges and leaves the liars sweeping up the splinters.